So let's talk about this again. Last time we talked about Dylan Strome, it was because all the way back in April, Elliotte Friedman said that Dylan Strome was indeed available on the trading block. This was somewhat of a surprise, depending on who you asked. I know for me personally, it was kind of a surprise since I hadn't really been paying too much attention to the Chicago Blackhawks and its overall cap situation. But to many Blackhawks fans who were in my comments section, especially when I made a video talking about how Dylan Strome was indeed on the trade block, they laid out their reasons as to why things worked out the way they worked out. Mostly because it's a combination of him being an RFA on an entry-level deal, the Blackhawks having a projected $7 million in cap space to re-sign guys like Kubalik, like Drake Caggiula, like Dylan Strome, as well as Slater Cuckoo, and the Corey Crawford thing also playing a part of that definitely also puts a dent in this whole idea. But earlier yesterday, we had ourselves a little interview done with Dylan Strome, and it was on the subject of his RFA status. This is what Dylan Strome had to say. Obviously, I'm a restricted free agent, so hopefully I'll be back here in Chicago, but you don't know. And that's a weird quote to me. Maybe that's just my inner Vancouver Canucks fan coming out, because any tiny little piece of interview material that comes out here in this city gets analyzed to heck. But isn't this kind of weird? For a player to outright admit, I would like to come back here, but I don't know if I'm going to be back here. I don't want to label Dylan Strome as a pessimist by any means, but normally under these circumstances, in my opinion, I would have expected more of an answer like, you know what, I love playing here in Chicago, the contract situation is something that my agent and the general manager are going to deal with, I'm just focused on playing hockey and winning the play-in series against the Oilers. That's normally what I would come to expect from an RFA player approaching RFA status and who is still going to be playing hockey games with his team in the short-term future. Not, hopefully I'll be back here, but I don't know if I'm going to be back here, man. I wanna, but I don't know. That's just super weird to me, but because I saw this pop up on my timeline, it wanted me to explore a little bit more of the Dylan Strome stuff, just on a better level than we did in the most previous video. In the most previous video, we talked about Elliotte Friedman's comments that he mentioned on Buffalo's WGR Sport Radio 550, the Instigators show. Those guys, Andrew Peters and Craig Rivett, they asked Elliotte Friedman about the possibility of a Dylan Strome trade, and Friedman said he's available. Like, he's available. I don't think the cost is really prohibitive. No, I don't. The whole thing about this NHL pause due to the virus is that we don't know where any of this is going to take us. So it's a little bit different, but he is available. I don't think the cost is prohibitive. Why would the Blackhawks want to trade Dylan Strome? Well, because he is an RFA and because, well, they already got so much money tied up into other guys like Saad and Zach Smith and Olli Mata and Connor Murphy that it makes some of the projections for some of their other RFAs kind of muddy. Especially the ones that have been really good, like Dominik Kubalik. Especially for the UFAs who have had a historical long tenure with the team, like Corey Crawford. So when Dylan Strome talks about how he doesn't know if he's going to be a Blackhawk next season, that could be referring to one of two things. Either one, it means that he is not going to sign with Chicago, meaning that he will exercise his right as an RFA and sign what would be, I guess, an offer sheet from some other team so that the Blackhawks would get compensation and picks if he does indeed sign with another team and the Blackhawks refuse to match. Or he's referring to the idea of a potential trade because the idea of him being on the trade block has established itself in the media via Elliotte Friedman all the way back in April. Now, we know nothing has changed in terms of the NHL between April and now, aside from the playoffs and the play-in series and all that, but when it comes to the actual structure of these hockey teams, the personnel behind them, some teams have added guys like Romanov and Sorokin and Kaprizov, and some guys have signed free agents. But other than that, there hasn't been much that has changed. So there isn't really anything new on the Dylan Strome front in terms of where he would go, etc., but just him mentioning all this stuff to the media is noteworthy to me. I know Blackhawks fans all over are looking to keep Dylan Strome, and they're thinking about ways to do that. Trading away guys like Olli Mata or Calvin DeHaan or whatever, just making moves in general to free up some more cap space. Because when it comes to the way some of these Blackhawks have been playing, you could argue that a guy like Dylan Strome doesn't deserve as much money as a guy like Dominik Kubalik, who just scored 30 goals in however many games played, deserves too. If I'm going to be really honest, though, I think Dylan Strome's somewhat down year this past season is going to be a good thing for whichever team is going to sign him to a contract. What I mean by that is you may be able to be signing a Dylan Strome at somewhat of a bargain, because last season, in 2018-19, Dylan Strome, after being traded to the Chicago Blackhawks, was just under a point per game, 51 points in 58 games as a center on this team. Playing alongside of DeBrincat, playing alongside of some other wingers, he was a really good fit. This past season, though, they moved Strome to the wing, they started playing him less, and now he finished off the year with 38 points in 58 games. To me, Strome is a big-bodied centerman, and I say centerman because I think he excels the most when he plays as a center, is still a potential top 6 forward who has a boatload of potential. He's only 23 years old, mind you. And whether or not his next contract is a bridge deal of some sorts, or it's a long-term locking in of the player, there is room for Dylan Strome to become better than what he was this past season. A guy like Alex DeBrincat, who was able to post up 40-something goals and 70 points last year, is getting $6.4 million starting next season until the end of 2023. Dylan Strome is probably worth a little bit less than that, just in terms of the way DeBrincat was able to be so successful and the way that his money translated into that success. So, you could be getting this guy in a bargain. To me, Dylan Strome for a very long time was a potential number 1 center candidate. I remember watching the 2014-2015 OHL season religiously, keeping up with the Erie Otters and Connor McDavid and the London Knights with Marner and Dvorak, and watching the Kevin LeBanc show go on with the Barry Colts system. But Dylan Strome leading the league in that year to me was such a big indicament of how good he was going to be. He was supposed to be amazing, elite number 1 center potential. It's just because he played on the same team as Connor McDavid, and Connor McDavid missed out on like 20 games that season, he wasn't really seen as the best he could be. Nevertheless, he went 3rd overall to the Coyotes, Mitch Marner went 4th overall, Connor McDavid obviously he went 1st overall, that's no surprise, but to me, this group of players was always going to be so good, and it was tough watching Strome struggle throughout the AHL and struggle in the Coyotes system to put up points and dominate in the same way. But the Chicago Blackhawks gave him a chance, and he started doing extraordinarily well. And the Blackhawks fans who have been telling me, yeah, this guy started doing poorly once they played him less, once they played him on the wing, and once they started playing him with David Kampf and Ryan Carpenter and all that. Once he was moved back to center later towards the end of the year, he started, slowly albeit, putting points back up there on the score sheet. So to me, Dylan Strome still, no questions asked, has a ton of potential. He's only 23, and we can see, even with the same bloodline, how some of these Strome guys get a little bit better towards the middle part of their careers, more so than the earlier stages. Look at Ryan Strome with the Rangers. You could say that sure, Artemi Panarin had a big part in making Ryan Strome a 60-point forward in the NHL, but hey, Ryan Strome is 27 years old. By the time Dylan Strome is 27 years old, I wouldn't be surprised if he already had at least 2 or 3 60, maybe 65-point seasons under his belt already. So, for whoever team ends up signing Dylan Strome to a contract, whether that's the Chicago Blackhawks, who we've already spoken about, have apparently had Dylan Strome on the trade block, or it's another team who Strome eventually signs a contract with in the off-season period, I honestly think you're getting a really good player, and there isn't any reason to doubt this guy and deny him the opportunities to actually bolster and develop his game, because we've seen it in the past. When given the chance, this guy shows. And that's been the sentiment that we've been receiving for this player for years and years and years, since 2015. Mitch Marner's already a star in this league, so are a whole bunch of the other guys taken after Strome in that same entry draft. Matthew Barzal, Jake DeBrusk, Kyle Connor, Mikko Rantanen, Brock Besser. There is so much room for growth amongst all of these guys, but Dylan Strome to me is the one who may be the most untapped amongst that entire group. So talk to me in the comments below what you think about Dylan Strome. Where do you think he ends up? Is it Chicago or is it another NHL team? Tell me what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Switch with our Trolls 99, and bye.